Hey gang, this is Nathan Stanley, your instructor for stats, and I just wanted to, this first video, go over briefly how to use StatCrunch to create frequency tables, and more importantly, how to construct a histogram, which is like a vertical bar chart that basically the height of each bar in that histogram corresponds to the frequency for each class. And so let's look at an exercise from the section 2.1 homework. This is exercise 8 of 9. And what it asks is you to construct a frequency distribution and a relative frequency histogram for the data set using 5 classes. Which class has the greatest relative frequency and which has the least? So here we go. What you got here off to the right, upper right corner of this question, is the raw data set of 36 numbers. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on a small icon next to the raw data set. Kind of looks like a double pane window or a pop-up window icon. It's very small. Usually you'll see it right next to the raw data set. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to open it in StatCrunch. And if you're getting pop-up blockers, make sure you allow pop-ups for this website so that you can see this. So now I'm in StatCrunch. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to relabel this column. I'm going to go ahead and click on the name and overwrite it with raw data. Alrighty. And then if I go back to the column name and click on the down arrow, I should be able to sort my table ascending from smallest to largest. I'll go ahead and do that. And now I have it sorted. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a new column called classes. And under that, I am going to start creating my classes for the data. Now, I need to first figure out what the class width is before I get any further. So if you look at the data, so far it looks like the smallest value in the data set is 1, and the largest value is, I got to scroll down here, largest value is 10. And if you go back to the problem and read the instructions, it said for you to create 5 classes. And if the lowest value is a 1 and the highest value is a 10, then what would be the class width? Well, the range is going to be 10 minus 1, which is 9. So the range is 10 minus 1, which is 9. Okay, I'm just making notes here. And then what else? The number of classes we need is 5. So if I want to find the class width, I'm going to have to take the range divided by 5, which is 9 divided by 5, which is roughly 1.8, I believe. But if you end up with a decimal, whether it be 1.1, 1.4, 1.7, 1.8, you always have to round up to the next whole number. So here we'd have to round up to 2. So our class width is going to be 2. Just making notes here. I'm probably going to erase this later, but the class width is 2. All right, so starting with the lowest value in the data set, which is 1, I'm going to skip by 2s and make my lower class limits. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Skipping by increments of 2, those are my lower class limits. Okay. Next, I'm going to go ahead and in the same column, I'm going to add my upper class limits. So I'm going to go from, since I'm starting at 3 in the second class, I have to stop short at 2 in my first class. So my first class will go 1 to 2. Next one will go 3 to 4. Next class will go from 5 to 6. The next one will go from 7 to 8. And the last one will go from 9 to 10. And notice the pattern here. Your lower class limits skip by 2s each time because that's our class width. And the upper class limits do the same. They skip by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So here I have 5 classes, and it looks like I'm keeping my class width of 2 consistent for my upper limits and my lower limits. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and erase this garbage. Actually, the way I can do that is I can just delete the whole column. I'm going to click on here and just delete the column. There we go. Next, I'm going to create frequencies. So I'm going to create a column. I'm going to rename this column frequency. And then I'm going to count up how many numbers in the raw data fit in the range 1 to 2. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go ahead and enter that number here. Between 3 and 4, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. From 5 to 6, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Next one, between 7 and 8, I've got 1, 2, 3. And then the last one, between 9 and 10, I've got, I'm going to have to probably scroll down here just a hair. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Whoops, wrong way. There we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add up this column. To do that, I'm going to put a formula or expression in the next column to the right. To do that, I'm going to go to Data. I'm going to go to Compute, Expression. And then the expression I'm going to put is what's called a sum function, S-U-M, parentheses. Then I'm going to put the name of the column that I'm adding up in the parentheses, and I want to add up the frequencies. So I'm going to put sum, and then the column name in the parentheses, and click compute. And you can see it's 36. All right, 36 is my sum. All right. So let's go ahead in a new column. Let's do our relative frequencies. Let me go ahead and abbreviate that. Or I can spell it out if you'd like, relative frequency. And what we're going to do next is take all of these raw or regular frequencies and use them to compute a relative frequency. Now here again, I'm going to put in a formula. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to go to Data. I'm going to go to Compute, Expression. And what I want to do is I want to take each value in the column frequency and then use divide, and you can use the / to mean division, and then divide by 36, which was the sum of the frequencies. If you remember, relative frequencies are found by taking each individual frequency and divide by the total of the frequencies, which was 36. So I take each frequency divided by 36, I'm going to click Compute, and there they are. Now they do automatically put computations in the next column over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete this column. There we go. And there's my relative frequencies. I'm going to go ahead and rename that again, relative frequencies. All righty. Next, I'm going to do cumulative frequencies. If you remember what cumulative frequencies are, those are basically, as you go row to row, you add up the frequencies as you go down. And so we're going to start with 7, but then when we add the 8 to the 7, we get 15. And then when we add the next 10 to the previous 15, we get 25. And then when we add the 3 to the previous sum of 25, we get 28. And then finally, when we add the 8 to the previous sum of 28, we get 36. And so your cumulative frequencies should arrive at the same number as you did when you summed these frequencies up. You should add up to 36. And so that's how you would make some columns and put some frequencies, relative frequencies, and cumulative frequencies in StatCrunch. We did all this manually. So most of this work we've done, we didn't really use any powerful tools that StatCrunch provides. We pretty much did it on our own manually. But one powerful tool that they do provide is an easy way to graph what's called a histogram, which is a vertical bar chart. Where each the height of each bar reflects the frequency for that class. So to do this, what we're going to do is first I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a new column. So I'm going to insert one column to the left here. And I want to create what are called class boundaries. The reason I want to do that is they will come in handy later when we do the histogram. If you remember, class boundaries are used to close the gaps between classes. You can see as you go from one class to the next that when you get from 2 to 3, you have to jump a gap of 1. When you go from 4 to 5, you have to jump a gap of 1. When you go from 6 to 7, you have to jump a gap of 1. To close the gap, what they do is they look at the gap from one class to the next, which is 1, and then they divide that gap in half. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, and that 0.5 they add to the upper number and take away from the lower number to get the boundaries. So we're going to subtract 0.5 from the 1, and we're going to add 0.5 to the 2 to make boundaries of 0.5 to 2.5. And we're going to do the same here. We're going to take away 0.5 from 3 to get 2.5, and we're going to add 0.5 to 4 to get 4.5. And we're going to keep doing that until we fill in all our classes with our boundaries. And the reason boundaries exist is boundaries are the things that are used to label the x-axis when you're doing a histogram. They don't typically label them with class limits. They typically label them with class boundaries, because the vertical bars in a histogram don't have gaps between them, but because the classes have gaps, we have to create the boundaries instead where there are no gaps. You can see there's no gap between the 2.5 here and the 2.5 here. Likewise, there's no gap between the 6.5 in this class and the next class. We have to close the gaps so that there's basically no gap from one class to the next. And so now that I've created the boundaries, I'm going to refer to them when I make my histogram. So how do you make a histogram? Very simple. You go to Graph. Since histogram is a graph, you're going to click on Graph. You're going to go to Histogram. And then we always use the column where we have the raw data. So make sure, depending on how you named the column, make sure you picked the column that has the raw data set. Make sure it comes over here to this window. And then what we're going to do is we are going to create bins. And in those bins, we're going to start with the lowest class boundary, which is 0.5. 0.5, and then our width is the same as the class width. If you remember the class width, it was 2. And then we're going to click Compute, and it should create the histogram for you. And there it is. So the class boundaries are clearly marked on the x-axis right here. You can see those are also here in this list. And you can see the frequencies are 7, 8, 10, 3, and 8, which is reflected in this list here. So that's a histogram, basically. Unfortunately, StatCrunch can't do frequency polygons and cumulative frequency polygons very well. So in another video, I'm going to show you how to do all of those in Excel. All right, thank you for watching.